Russia and Ukraine through the foreign policy that we are conducting. And Sir has got an experience of having served as a deputy ambassador in Russia twice over. So Sir's experience and we will try to keep it, we will try to take the UPSC angle as well as to what kind of questions can we expect when it comes to UPSC civil services examination from mains perspective, and especially for the interview candidates, like the questions that are being asked from the candidates are like, what if the same thing is done to India vis-a-vis Jammu and Kashmir, right? So if India is taking a stand in terms of Russia-Ukraine affair, what if the same thing is done towards India's Jammu and Kashmir? So what would be India's stand? We'll be talking about such interesting topics in this session today, and starting with what is expected of a civil servant. Even though the Sir appeared way back in 1960s, but Sir's experience and the way he's been conducting UPSC mock interviews in the last year and last so many years, that experience will come in handy for many of you who are appearing for interview this year as well. Over to you, Sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here. A very good morning to you all. And so happy to see that so many people are really interested in the civil services. As the graph of India's growth grows, there is a greater emphasis towards the corporate world, towards entrepreneurship. But seeing our youth being interested a lot more into the civil services, and I was surprised when I've been interviewing in the mock interviews and all, that a very large number of people who are passing out, frankly, are from the engineering backgrounds, from the IITs, from BTech, from others. So I often ask them, I said, you have spent 5-7 years in getting this degree, or even doctors for that matter. How do you see it's going to work out for you in the civil services? And why do you want to go now here and not excel into what you have already done? That has been your choice, profession of choice. And then I realized, and I've been referring and telling the government also, especially the Ministry of External Affairs, that these people who are coming from this science background can be a great asset for us, because we are moving into a very different kind of a world that will be driven by the artificial intelligence towards the Industrial Revolution 4.0, and for which I always say that we must have a governance 5.0 if we want to deal with those kind of challenges. Getting technology collaborations is extremely important. So those people, we must try to create a pool, train them into techno-diplomacy. Classical diplomacy, as you know, the job of it is basically to create good relationships. And for any question that you're going to answer on foreign policy issues, the most important dimension is that the job of the foreign policy of any country is to serve its national interest. Now, what is the national interest? Not you and I define. The national interest is defined by the government of the day. If we have any ideas, we feed those ideas into the system in a position that we are. And that is basically, like today we'll hear a lot about transformation of India. Now in the transformation of India, how are we going to get many countries and our relationships to help us? Secondly, you are also seeing that world is going through a major turmoil, a transition. And it's not from now, it's been happening. But what has accentuated it more is a growth of China, possibly a malignant growth, pandemic, Afghan situation, and now the Ukraine situation. Now these four things put together have created tremendous uncertainty in the world. So many questions from you will be asked on these kind of issues. Now, country of India's size, and every time you look at India, we have to look at it whether we are following a principled policy or it is a policy as it is being accused by many countries in the West, that it is an opportunistic policy. Opportunistic in the sense is because they say that you are dependent on Russia for your arms, ammunition, and that's why you have not condemned Russia for its aggression. But the fact is that if you do not know the whole background, you might get carried away. Yes, no country is allowed to invade another country, especially in this 21st century. That is wrong. No one should approve it. Everyone should disapprove this. India has disapproved. But what happens is, by sheer condemnation, what you are doing is you are going into a camp, another camp, whose basic job is to destabilize Russia and not have an alternate geopolitical pole. And that is the whole game. You must have heard the names: geopolitics, geoeconomics, geostrategy. So all these factors combined are playing out at this time. How are they playing out? So let us look at it, India's position. Now, when Iraq war happened, Americans and the NATO countries went and bombed the country. The country is still not come out. It is still facing the same problem of transition. They went ahead and bombed Libya. They had earlier done in Vietnam as well. We have seen it. So whenever you look at these kind of actions, unilateral actions taken by these countries, which are superpowers, they are leading to a much greater destabilization and merely to serve their own geopolitical interests. So if India has abstained when United States and the NATO intervened in Libya, they bombed Libya, we were in the United Nations Security Council at that time also. We had abstained because we did not approve of the military intervention. And this has been one of the key considerations even this time. If we had to go with Russia, for example, we would have voted against. But we did not vote. We abstained. And not only us, China abstained, many other countries. The reason is that, number one, India clearly says that we must cease the hostilities. Russia should. And it was not only at the United Nations Security Council. Prime Minister Modi called up Putin, spoke to Zelensky several times and told them to cease the hostilities, return to dialogue and diplomacy. Peace is very essential. UN Charter is very important. What does the UN Charter say? UN Charter says that every country's sovereignty and territorial integrity are extremely important. And therefore, the India's stance, if you were asked a question, is for peace, for diplomacy, for multilateralism, for integrity, territorial integrity, and for sovereignty. Of who? Ukraine. Because here the bigger country which is invading is Russia. So without condemning, we have also said everything. Secondly, in the diplomatic language, or whenever you read a statement, you have to learn to read between the lines. Another thing is that most of the opinion today is made through another very important tool, which is also a tool of the war, and that is the disinformation campaigns. It's an industry, and the media is an integral part of it. We get exposed to only the English media, and therefore our opinion is made on that basis. We do not understand what is happening on the ground, yet we make an opinion and we keep watching it, so we think that is wrong. No one is going to approve of humanitarian disaster. So India, when the Bucha killings resolution came in the UN Security Council, India condemned the Bucha killings. So it is not that our position has been static. 11 times that we abstained on that, but every time it was on a matter of principle. What did India say when it abstained? It said that this should be independently investigated. Now, what is wrong with it? The Americans, the Britishers, and the Europeans don't want that. because they want their own narrative to prevail, and saying that India is a democracy and therefore it should stand with the democracies. But their fake democracy also, we are at least the largest democracy in the world where the power transfers smoothly. We have seen what happened in the United States on January 6th, which is supposed to be the greatest democracy of the world. So we have to take our own views, and that's where the India's independent foreign policy comes into play. Now, many people, you must be reading in the newspapers, and it's very interesting to use this word, that India is walking a delicate or a fine line on this issue. I say, and it's a fact, you can see it from the thing, that we are not walking any fine lines. We are standing by the principle that we have stood forever. Before independence, since independence, when we created the non-aligned movement. And the non-aligned movement, what was the policy of that time? That we will review every issue on the merit. What is the merit of this particular case? Sometimes, of course, we had to look the other way. Like, we did not decry Soviet invasion in Afghanistan. But the records have been now made public, and Indian Prime Minister had very clearly told that we were very unhappy with that. So it has been told bilaterally to friends. On the other hand, if you were to just see from your national interest perspective, because one thing is principled stand, other is national interest. Now, if you see the national interest, until 50 years ago, United States had its own Cold War setup in which they were supporting Pakistan all along. During the Bangladesh War, it was the American Fifth Fleet which came against India. At that time, that India was held by the Soviet Union. So, a country which is a superpower, which is going, or rather hyperpower, which is going against you totally, so you need friends who can help you stand up. Soviet Union was one country. Every time in the United Nations Security Council, the issue of Kashmir came up, or anything that was against India's interest, Soviet Union vetoed it for us. Till today, even when China tries to push against India in some places, when we are not in the Security Council, this time we are, then also Russia tempers it all the time. So we have to see it from our own interest. This is one country, and I can share with you the example of my own service there. 99, when I was there, we had Kargil war going. During the Kargil war, and this is not to brainwash you, I'm simply stating the fact. We went there, and then suddenly some oil seals for aircrafts, guns, these are required. We didn't have them. Spare parts, supply of spare parts in an uninterrupted manner is the most important thing during a war. And when the war is going on and you have a problem, at that time, you are not getting it from anywhere. No other country would have done that. But when we got this request from Delhi, along with the air attaché, we approached the local government. We said, Defense Ministry, we said, we need this. Within about 2 hours' time, they got back to us. They said, these are available some 500-700 kilometers away in a plant. Please go there, pick up and take it. And if you don't have it, a plane to carry you, we will send with our plane. Now, that is the friendship and the point of war. And that is the reason if an average Indian feels and is distrustful for Americans or the West in that sense, for the basically colonial bondage, what happened during that time and thereafter. In the first 70, 80, 60 years of your independence, you have seen how the West has played out against you, against your interests. They did not like us being non-aligned, didn't like our independent views. You have to see the holistic manner that the situation has prevailed. And any time, this is what Dr. Jaishankar recently, you all must be reading his very cryptic remarks, and rather, he was giving back to all the leaders. But today what has happened is that we had a spate of leaders coming here. We are part of the Quad, which is with Australia, Japan, USA, and India, which is supposed to be something which the Americans claim is against the Chinese expansionism. It's in our interest to be part of that group. On the other hand, we have BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. It's an economic group. We have SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, in which Russia and China both are the leaders. We are part of it. We are part of RIC, Russia, India, China, trilateral. But at the same time, we are also part of the JAI, Japan, America, and India. So we have decided to spread our basket in different areas. Wherever, whatever serves your national interest, you are working with them. Because we are not looking for war. We are looking for peace. If somebody is asking you that, well, diplomacy and dialogue you are saying, so you are just, because you can't do anything, so you are saying like that, right? It's a convenient thing to say, a good thing to mention. But India believes in the global goods, in the global commons. So you can look at it from our perspective. That is, when we have problem with China for the last 2 years, what are we doing? Initial skirmishes apart, thereafter we have been continuing with the dialogue and diplomacy. And it is a fact that thereafter, just recently, the Chinese foreign minister came to India unannounced, basically to find a way how we can move forward. But we have moved forward in the last so many years since 62. When we felt cheated by them, we had a proper working relationship with them. It was agreed that our relationship with China will continue in the competition and cooperation metrics. That we'll cooperate where we can and we'll compete where we must. So this has been going on now. But what happened in Ladakh, what happened in Galwan, changed that completely. So your trust is broken with China. But trust has broken at the same time. We have taken many instances. We wanted to show off to China that we are no less. So all eyeball to eyeball, our forces have been standing there and they have been giving back to the Chinese. Chinese have realized that India is no longer the India of 1962. They are also worried that India has today a much greater ambition of becoming a global power. And that ambition, because for that ambition, they think that our closeness to USA, to the Western countries, to other democracies, gives us an advantage against them in the Indo-Pacific. But think from a different point of view. As far as India is concerned, for America, it is a geopolitical competition, geoeconomic competition, because they are the ones who are going to be displaced by China. China is aiming to displace United States as number one power. That is the basic game there. So they want to put him down. For them, India is a strategic ally from the US perspective against the Chinese expansionism. No other country in the world which can stand up to China militarily, economically, or otherwise. We are also the second largest army in the world, right? So this is why they are looking at you. Whole Europe is coming up with the Indo-Pacific strategy, because that is the new theater of competition, geopolitical competition. So whatever we are seeing here is actually happening in real time. Taiwan and all these issues are just for the heck of it. But from India's perspective, we have two challenges with vis-a-vis China and an expansionist, hegemonistic China. What are these? One is on the land, because we have a border, the other in the maritime. China is trying to come into the Indian Ocean, and Indian Ocean is our backyard. We are the major power there. So we owe that security to everything. Now you must know about some of these straits like Hormuz, like Pak Strait. These are very important choke points for trade. All the oil passes through that. China's 80-85% trade passes through that. India's trade passes through. So anything happens in these choke points, we have a big problem for us. Now, so China, we are continuing on this path, but they've been clearly told that till you go back or the border situation is normalized, we are not going to have business as usual. So you can call it a cold peace between India and China at this moment. But let us not forget that in times to come, as we compete beyond the region, and you must know that China's basic objective is to keep India within South Asia. It does not want India to get out of the region, and even there get entangled into the problems. Pakistan is their ironclad friend, is a bigger problem for us, right? Not because it's any country of great significance or nuclear power or whatever, but they indulge in asymmetric warfare, which is using cross-border terrorism as an instrument of their foreign policy, right? This they've been doing it now 40 years. USA simply understood the importance of the West of terrorism after 9/11. Before that, they did not bother about terrorism, and we were suffering from it 20, 30 years before. Whenever we would go with our documents, with everything, they would not even listen to you. The reason is till today, in the international domain, there is no definition of terrorism. No single definition of terrorism, because it serves their purpose. You can imagine that they are telling Putin a war criminal. He should be tried by ICC, International Criminal Court. And it is the United States, which is not a member of that. Imagine hypocrisy of it all. So you have to, when you are making your foreign policy, you have to look at the hypocrisy of these countries. In the International Court of Justice, the maximum violations of the judgments have been by the United States. They have not abided by them. When ICC tried to, investigate crimes in Iraq, at that time, Americans wanted to sanction the judges. Now, so if you have that kind of a thing, my way or highway, or might is right, or jungle raj, that kind of a situation which is prevailing, and when you consider the United Nations as an instrument of your foreign policy, then you cannot look at an important and a strong multilateral institution. How will it work? We are seeing its inefficacy today. It has simply become a tool or a talking shop for the countries, because two P5 countries, two veto wielding powers are involved. So they go to UNGA, which they never called before. Can you imagine, for last 20, 30 years? Never. They went into Iraq, nobody could do that. They went to Libya, they didn't do it. Anywhere they go, it was not called. But then they go to UNGA 3-4 times in no time, because they think the numbers. I spoke to many of my African friends and some other countries. You'll be surprised. They told us, do we have an option when an American president or American Secretary of State calls us? We'll vote with them. We have no option. So they are looking for a third option. Now, what is the impact of this war? This war will end or not end, we don't know. When it might be a smoldering war for some more time, because Putin is not going to give in so easily. And the Americans, and remember one thing, the underlying fact is this war is not between Russia and Ukraine. This war is between Russia and the United States. That's a fact. It has already started coming out when their defense secretary mentioned in Ukraine, when they are pumping billions of dollars worth of arms and equipment in Ukraine. I told yesterday on a channel, I said, the Americans say we will fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. Think of the words. Who is going to fight? Ukrainians. Who are going to be killed? Ukrainians. Who is going to suffer? Europeans and the rest of the world. What happens to America? The arms and ammunition industry prospers. Right? So this is a game of mercantilism as well. So we have to look at, it is now today energy security problem. USA is completely independent on energy security. It doesn't bother. They are becoming a great exporter. The West Asian countries are very upset. Earlier they were their major importers. Countries like India, where 85% of oil and gas that you have to import, it is extremely important. Today you all know that when you put a petrol is 120, 115 rupees a litre, and in the market is $130 a barrel. So it is impacting you. And when the oil prices increases, the whole economy is going to tizzy. Your food prices go up, your everything else, I mean, the whole industry becomes dysfunctional. We are still a country with a stronger economy comparatively, but within the last 3 months, we have lost more than $40 billion out of our foreign exchange. More than $40 billion because of the price rise. So it is having a direct impact. So it is in our interest that peace prevails, that the war stops, that the prices are controlled. So what is wrong in our stance? That's what I'm trying to say. On the other hand, with America also, because of the geopolitical compulsions, our relationship has moved forward in a very major way. I mean, they are now, something called strategic partnership. It has become a new fashionable word, which every country tries to do with the other, signifying that this is a special relationship. It is not simply a transactional relationship. Means you sell something, I buy something. It's not that. It is that how we can strategically position our synergies to our mutual advantage against third-party threats. And that's what basically a strategic partnership. With the Americans, what we call it? We call it Global Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. Means all over the world. And the Americans don't trust us very much. We don't trust them. But still they have no choice. We are the second largest importer of arms and ammunition. And the US thrives and survives on its arms ammunition industry. From Connecticut to California, they are the ones. This is the only country where the pressure groups dictate the foreign policy. Think tanks or otherwise, whatever you see, industry lobbies. So they see that if there is no conflict, that industry goes into a hibernation, which they would not like. So that is important that there is some conflict somewhere for all the arms producing countries. It's very important. So it is in their interest that Europe remains in a kind of a worrying mode so that they increase their purchases. Everybody else tries to think that, okay, we must buy more and divert their resources to some other countries like that. Which you could use for development. Now you are forced to use it for buying new weapons. And we have seen if the countries can really manage, you can see that no superpower in the past 60, 70 years has won a single war. They've been defeated everywhere. Themselves, not smaller countries I'm talking about. Remember, I was just telling Vietnam, the Americans lost terribly. China in Vietnam lost badly. Soviet Union in Afghanistan, British in Afghanistan, USA in Afghanistan, Iraq, Americans, Afghanistan recently. Russia will not win this war. It's not possible to win the war. It is very difficult to hold the territories of a second largest country in Europe. That is also not Putin's objective. His objective was essentially that NATO expansion should stop. He even offered that Russia should become a part of NATO when he spoke to Clinton, that I'm ready to be part of you. They would not want it. Because if you know, like in Pakistan, the Pakistan is governed by its army and not by we should not get carried away by their political dispensation. They come and go, but if the army pulls the strings, the country's democratic leadership, or whatever we may call it, has no say, because the army is involved in everything, day-to-day affairs. It controls the industry. It has stakes in the industry. So if there is no threat, their threat is India. So they pose India as a big threat, and that's why they remain in control. So it's extremely important for them that problem with India continues. That is why every time you try to mend fences with them, you will find that there will be some attack somewhere. That's by the deep state, which sits in Rawalpindi. It's not Islamabad that decides, but it's Rawalpindi which decides the course of action. This is what happened to Imran Khan. And now Shahbaz Sharif is back. So the relationship will be better. But then you have China behind them, whom they call as their ironclad friend. So as long as Sino-Pak Axis, as it is called, continues to confront us, we will need to find newer partners, be it in Russia, be it in US, be it in Europe. But look at it another way, that what is the other impact it will have apart from food, apart from energy, apart from fertilizers and the oil, eating oil and all, which are being now a major problem for all the world, really. Now, if you think that, okay, oil producing countries are making money, frankly, there are in the West Asia, GCC countries are the ones who have oil. That is also fungible asset, by the way, 80 years, 70 years, that's all. So they are all moving towards a different renewable energy and alternate energy sources. So here what we are looking at, that the countries are now about out of the 27, 28, or let's say OIC, if you see 57 countries, Islamic countries, they are facing the problem of food, fertilizer. Egypt, largest country with population wise in Africa, an Arab country, and there also they have major problems. Sri Lanka, your neighborhood. Apart from whatever Rajapaksa has made a mess, both the Rajapakshas in their policies and what kind of thing. The problem is that the fuel has become so expensive, they are unaffordable. A country with $51 billion debt has today $50 million reserve. 50 million, and a debt of $51 billion. A small country. Pandemic impact and the impact of this war, which is directly affecting everyone in this. So that's why I say that the policy of India in that sense is extremely good. Now let me just briefly tell you about what is happening in our neighborhood other than these two. Pakistan, you all know, we are not on talking terms. Like Pekai ki tarah. So what we are doing with Pakistan now is that we are not showing any great effort that we want to normalize ties with you. The reason is India's problem with Pakistan is only unifocal. One point: stop cross-border terrorism. That's it, nothing else. What kind of a policy India follows with its neighbor? You may call it neighborhood first policy or Gujarat doctrine in the before earlier days, or whatever. I mean, there are plenty of ways we can define it. But in a sense, this policy has been driven by a non-reciprocal approach by India. We are giving you something, we are giving you market access, we are providing you assistance in billions of dollars, we are giving you lines of credits, we are in capacity building. But what do we expect from them? Our expectation is, again, one point. Please do not allow your territories to be used against India through terrorists or others. That's the only thing that India expects. Is not insisting, but expects. We have made mess sometimes. Some policies have not been really so conducive to generate confidence among those countries. For example, we are treated sometimes like Big Brother. And they say it is called Big Brother syndrome, with which all our small neighbors suffer. You can't help it. I mean, if you have a rich neighbor who is flaunting in Maseratis and others, I mean, you might feel jealous, right? But you can't do much. So if India is big, is the largest economy, is a big military, I tell you an interesting story. When I was posted in Bangladesh, there at that time, Irshad government used to be in power, General Irshad, and we had a very difficult relationship with them, right? They were completely trying to wipe out India's footprint in that. So what they were looking at. Suddenly we heard, and we used to have 12 crore people there, right? Population, out of which 10 crores were Muslims, 2 crores Hindus. But Irshad will only speak of 10 koti manush, right? Only 10. He will leave them out. So their government, a very rabid home minister, he tried to create a communal tension one fine morning. And we suddenly, a lot of people came, representatives from here and there. They're saying that, this is what is happening. They've defiled this temple. And, during this time, a lot of rumors also go. They spread. That's how the communal riots happen. So suddenly, all the riots started. and whatever bad happens during the riots happen. This is about 3 hours or so. And then suddenly the news came that Indian forces have landed, peacekeeping forces, ISKP, have landed in Jaffna, in Sri Lanka. Nothing to do with Bangladesh, right? But the Indian forces landed that time in 87 in Jaffna. Can you imagine the effect of that? And I call it wielding power. That immediately the whole government got into an action. And they stopped it within half an hour. Within half an hour. And immediately Ershad sent his special envoy to meet Rajiv Gandhi. Now that is when you exercise power. Like 71, for example. It stands tall in our history when we could define a policy and exercise a policy. What have we done now? Somebody will ask you. We started an online movement. After that, for many years, there was nothing much we did. We continue to grow. That's all right, both in size and in prosperity. But what has we started now? Something very new, a multilateral institution. That is called International Solar Alliance, ISA, with the French. That's a great achievement for India. You have something to say to the world. And how many countries? 170, 160 countries have become members, including the United States, who has joined it now recently. So everybody who's somebody is under your leadership today. So when in the climate change summit, Prime Minister Modi goes and speaks, people listen to you because you're talking some sense. While we say that we are not talking for India alone, because India has always championed the cause of the developing countries, whether it was in NAM, whether it is in ISA, whether it is in CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. That's another very important thing. Or for being a country which is the first responder. In our neighborhood, anything happens, Sri Lanka, we have given about $4 billion in aid and everything. Every second day, a ship is going and providing them relief materials. If Maldives did not have water, we sent water. When there was a coup, Indian forces went and helped them at their request. When Nepal had the earthquake, India was the first country to go. Even in Pakistan, for that matter. I mean, India's policy with Pakistan has been that a strong Pakistan, economically strong Pakistan, is in India's favor. So that you don't have to divert your limited resources for this kind of threat. And that is something, policy, but they don't understand because as I told you, the reason is army and intelligence in the country. That's why in Afghanistan what happened, they don't want India to play a role. But until yesterday or a year ago, India was a major player in Afghanistan. In whether it's infrastructure, capacity building, everything. 20 years we invested in their dams, we invested in everything to create a leadership in the country. Capacity building, that's our strength. Soft power is our strength. Not the army. We have the second largest, most powerful, very professional army in the world. But that is basically to keep our borders safe. We are not looking at somebody else's land. That's the difference between India and other countries. So you have a global influence today. Now, how do you measure it? Look at Yoga Day. Right? Now we are all doing yoga, courtesy Baba Ramdev. Okay, I mean, naturally, you have to give the man credit. He made it a home thing. In 2015, I think, 2015, Prime Minister Modi thought that we must try to have an international day of yoga. Now, so many 57 countries are Islamic countries. Very often they will not go along with you. China will not go along with you, thinking that India is taking some advantage. Likewise, there are many countries who still grudge and will not go at the United Nations. But you'll be surprised. It was 177 countries out of 190 who sponsored the resolution to declare. That shows that you have arrived. So today you cannot be taken just for granted. You cannot be pushed around, be it Americans or be it anybody else. Why? Look at it. You are the second largest country population-wise in the world today. And inshallah, you will be next 10 years, you will be number one. Right? Nothing bad about it. It's your demographic dividend. Look at it as an asset. You guys are asset. Youngsters. It's a young country. To 2050 onwards, it will be Africa. Right? It will not be India anymore. We will have the same China effect in India. But that is one. You are the largest democracy, functioning democracy. I say always. We have our weaknesses. We could be better. We could be secular, a little more secular, less, I would say, loud. But we are there. Every country has some problems. We also have problems. But we are fighting those problems. We have poverty. We are fighting the poverty. Right? We at the same time, what are we doing? And then, of course, let's just go by what India is. You all know it, but let me just put it in 5 points. Democracy, largest population, going to be the largest market in the world. That is most important in this commercially or geo-economic contestations in the world. Your strategic location. You are a nuclear power. You are a space power. Everything is going into space today. Oh, sorry. Okay now. So, we have now, you can say we have everything. If you have the market, that is your biggest strength. If we are the second largest importers of weapons, now we know after what China did during the pandemic, the global value and supply chains have come under tremendous stress. And we are nowhere in the global value supply chains, nowhere. Despite being an ICT power, very often I used to wonder we can't have a nice kind of a software which is easy to use. So difficult. Really, I mean, sometimes I have faced that problem. You know, it's not so easy. We could have done something much more simpler. That's what the whole purpose of the IT is. So you are an IT power. You are a knowledge economy. You have the largest youth dividend. So where is the future? Is here. If you are the future, if you are the biggest market, you are the biggest country, you are the biggest democracy, why should you be scared of those kind of opinions that they can create a narrative for you? So when External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar at the Raisina Dialogue said that we will not allow them to make the narratives against us, we will make the narratives. And that's what India is. Today, it is a confident India. So that's why I say, when we are saying, listen to us, man, when we are not going to listen to you all the time, you can't seminize us. When they tell you that you have human rights violation in your country, you have this, that, please, for God's sake, read the human rights report. The first country violating on the list would be America. Nobody utters a word against them. I have been mentioning to the government and everybody, let's create dossiers on all these countries who come to us with the human rights. Why? It does not mean that we should not address our problems. You know, the problems in the country are there, plenty of them. They should be addressed. Rightly so. Every citizen deserves that right. But at the same time, we don't give that right to those countries because that is their agenda. They want to use this to malign your reputation, to put you in the backseat or in the corner. That is their foreign policy goal. So that you are like if somebody accuses you of something, you leave everything which is important and start working on defending yourself. This is a human nature, right? So this also applies to the states when they are dealing in the international politics. So they try to do the same thing. Should we allow that? So my 1 point submission is that India has arrived. We have a long way to go. Still a long way to go. But we have arrived at a point where the world looks up to you. Now, how do you prove that? Just 3 months. Don't go back beyond. In last 3 months, you had the Quad Leaders Summit. Japanese Prime Minister came here. With the Australian Prime Minister, we dealt with in the virtual summit. Signed an FTA or whatever. With Biden, US President, we had a virtual summit. It was not supposed to be the summit between them. Right? But 2+2 was happening. 2+2 means Foreign Minister, Defense Minister. Right? So there is this kind of a mechanism we have with 4 countries right now. Japan, Russia, US, and I think, just 3 only at the moment. But Australia has been wanting it also. So 2+2, or probably we had it. So we don't have it very many countries, right? So it's a special mechanism where security and foreign policy works together. So your defense minister and the foreign minister go together and they have a holistic discussion in this. But when both of them were there in Washington, D.C., Biden said, I want to talk to Prime Minister Modi before. And that is what shows that you are important. And then comes Boris Johnson. And then you have the European Union Commission President. And almost about more than a dozen foreign ministers from European countries, including China and Russia. Now, in a short period of time, 2.5 months, which other country in the world has these many important leaders visiting there? They all came to tell us, please join us in condemning Russia. That was their basic agenda. But behind that agenda was the main understanding that we have to keep our relationship with India intact because it's beneficial for them. They're looking at your market. They're not coming for a free ride or out of generosity or out of love for India. No, because it's a hard fact. They are coming to us because they know that India is the next big thing to happen. It's already happening. And they know that the way we behave, we are strong. We are strong. We behave strongly. It is the same India which in 1950s, 40s was looking for food aid from there. Today we are exporters. And something that helped us a great deal was during the pandemic. You see, we talk about vaccine diplomacy. It is one of the most important things we have done. But this is now. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and all, these are nice words to talk about, connecting it to our heritage, 2,500 years ago. What we did was, we have in 1964 onwards, we have a program called ITEC, Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program. Since 1964, we are providing assistance, including projects, including funding, billions of dollars to 161 countries in the world. Imagine, from East Europe to Africa, to Latin America, all over, including our neighbors. Maximum is given to the neighbors. So, this is something that is very important for us to understand. That we have been doing it forever, and capacity building, and it's called share and care approach. What we have, we want to share with you. Because we help them get the independence at the time, and then we continue to have the hand-holding and try to help. But we have not always had a specific focus policy. So let me just briefly touch upon it. We have neighborhood first policy, I told you, means सबसे पहले हमारे यही लोग हैं भाई, क्योंकि you can't choose your neighbors, no? Whether it is in your locality or in the countries or geography, they are gifted. You are gifted with them. So you have to live with them, and you have to somehow adjust and grow with them. So the positive thing is that, okay, guys, you do well, I do well, we go ahead, right? We do without necessarily interfering in each other's system. That's the approach, essentially. So provide what they need so that there is no social unrest in those countries. If they need something, India immediately helps as far as possible, right? So all the countries, this applies to Africa, this applies to. Then we have our Act West policy. Now, Act East, let me come to Act East. I remember in 97, there was a meeting by CII, Confederation of Indian Industries, the largest industry body. And they were talking about their Singapore Prime Minister was there. And he said, India only looks towards West. You are not looking towards East. That was something. Because see, East is in your whole of Asia. That is your natural habitat. We were, during time of Ashoka, to Palas, to Cholas, India has controlled those areas, right? Till today, Indonesia's Garuda is the symbol of the country on their currency. In front of the US Embassy in Washington, there is a Saraswati's idol, which they have. Because 3-4 children are sitting in statue form. Thailand is one country, not only Buddhism, but you have the only other Brahma temple there, except in, Ajmer, Pushkar. Yeah. After Pushkar, that's the only place where you have this. So, the Ram Leela, Mahabharata, all these are linkages. But we were just going towards the West, or maximum here close by. So India changed its policy, and then it was called Look East, and then it became Act East. Now Look East means they started reaching out to them, trying to have some kind of an agreement with them that, okay, we'll collaborate. We also signed an FTA, free trade agreement with them, which did not work well to our advantage. So we stopped it now, recently. But those countries are under the Chinese influence as well. Let's not forget, very often in our nation patriotism, we forget China is also everybody's neighbor. Right? Like they are our neighbors. Only difference between India and China is that we have a cultural and civilizational connect with these people at the people to people level, which China does not really have that much, especially in South Asia. And that's your advantage. So if you get entangled into their domestic problems for whatever reasons, then you lose that advantage, like that happened in Nepal. We don't have to do that. You have to be careful. When you are trying to play around with these, they are difficult. You can read about it, so I won't mention much. They are recording everything. So then Act East continued to become stronger. It became a security. We had the ASEAN Plus. Then India became a member and was invited to be to the East Asia Summit, in which the US, Russia, the big leaders also come. So your relationship with those countries have moved forward in a very strong manner until about 2005. In 2005, they had a downturn. As you know, the new economies, as they were called, they had a major downturn in those economies. Korea, South Korea, Japan, all of them. And then they started to revive themselves. In the meantime, we had 2008 financial crisis. So again, this. But once again, I would say our relationship with all these countries is excellent, but they are all countries are buying their time. They are not casting their lot with India, with US, with anybody, because China has grown much bigger. So they continue to have good relations with China. Try to have. They don't want to become a fodder in between. So India today has very good relations with Vietnam. It was impossible. Can you imagine that India is selling BrahMos missiles to Philippines or to Vietnam? It was not possible earlier, right? But today it is possible. We are able to do that. So we are making inroads into that area. So that Act East policy has done reasonably well. But the biggest success of this current government, I would say, and that is my area of actually expertise, is our Act West policy. That is, West means West Asia. West Asia means our neighborhood, extended neighborhood. All the Gulf countries, Middle East, that comes into West Asia. Americans call it, or Western countries call it Middle East, we call it West Asia, right? And North Africa, if you take Libya. So in these countries, they are extremely important for us. We buy our oil and gas from them. 75-80% comes from them. If there is an interruption there, the economy will go for it, right? You have fertilizers, inputs and fertilizer comes from there. So it's important for agriculture and food security. You have your diaspora there, about 9 million people who are sending about $60 billion even now to India, which is nearly 1/10 of your foreign exchange reserves. It's extremely important. Their security is very important. Maritime security. Their passages have to be open, like the free and open Indo-Pacific that we talk about. So that's very important, that Strait of Hormuz and all those remain open. So we had a buyer-seller relationship. Now, one more thing I always felt, and I can share with you, I thought that we have not played our Islamic credentials properly. We have 200 crore Muslims in India. We are the largest Muslim nation in the world, second largest after Indonesia. We had presidents, we had vice presidents, we had army chiefs, we had navy chiefs, and the top 3 actors are Muslims. Sure, soft power. What prevents you from talking about it? When the Arab countries look at it, when I traveled down, they were not aware, because Pakistan was saying that I am the leader of Muslims in the world. So you talk to me. In India, they are under. So in foreign policy, what is your strength? That strength needs to be projected as well. It's very important. It helps you, because if something happens here, social media today is so bad that it can multiply it, it can, very devious kind of messages can go, and the people sitting there, ordinary people, will not realize. When I was in Jordan, when Prime Minister Modi became the Chief Prime Minister first time, 2014, I was called by the Chief of Royal Court. And he said, now the relationship is going to be bad because Modi is very close to Netanyahu. With Israel, the relationship will go much higher. And at the expense of Palestine, at the expense of Arab countries and the causes and this. So I told him two things. I said, Excellency, you should not be the first one to tell me this, because you have a peace agreement with Israel. Secondly, India is not born in a day. Our foreign policies don't change overnight. It is driven by our national interest. Where is the national interest? We know it. Israel is an important strategic partner for us, security partner for us, reliable partner. That does not mean it will be at the expense of someone else. It's not. Unfortunately, Prime Minister Modi traveled to UAE, Saudi, and all these countries one after the other. And not only that, imagine. And that's why I say this is the most successful foreign policy, in my view, is with West Asia. He was the only leader in the world who has been decorated with the highest honor of each of these countries. Be it Saudi Arabia, be it UAE, including the Palestinians, when he traveled to Palestine. Earlier, what used to happen is, and you may be asked, what is de-hyphenation of the foreign policy, right? That word comes up very often. Earlier, it used to be like when a foreign minister, prime minister, or external affairs, or the president goes to Israel or Palestine, we did not have any visits. But if anybody was traveling, he has to go to both, to Palestine and to Israel. That was the case. Of course, we started our relationship, full diplomatic relationship with Israel only in 1992. Unfortunately, I used to be the deputy secretary at the time when this happened. So this is something which never happened before, right? Today, first country with which we have signed our free trade agreement with UAE, which is the fourth largest trading partner for India, as a hub. Saudi Arabia, we have a strategic partnership with all these countries. So it used to be a transactional relationship, but today they have realized. So how the change is measured. When Pulwama happened, when Balkot happened, when Article 370 happened, all these countries said this is India's internal matter. Even though OIC issued a statement, because Pakistan is there, we are not there. But at the same time, this is very important. And I tell you, some of you may know the story, those who read international politics. What happened in the OIC? You see, OIC called Organization of Islamic Countries before. Now it is called Organization of Islamic Cooperation, right? In 1969, there was a meeting in Rabat, Morocco. So they invited India also when the OIC was founded. And they say India should be, because we are a Muslim nation also. So we should be part of it. So our delegation was led by Mr. Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad, who was our agriculture minister at the time, but he became the president also, you know. So Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad goes there. Then from Pakistan, General Yahya Khan was there. And he went to King of Saudi Arabia, King of Morocco, and King of Jordan. And he said that if India is included in this delegation, in the OIC, I cannot return to my country. You see, this is what happened. So they said that, called our leader or ambassador was there, Gurcharan Singh, they told him that, why doesn't India become an observer? And we refused to be observers, rightly so. And the Indian delegation came back that way. So this is the story. And since then, because Pakistan did not want India to be there, otherwise, attention from it will go away. I mean, today you are the largest economic opportunity compared to Pakistan, which is a failed state economically and otherwise. So, but it has that platform, and it has this nuisance value, which it encashes vis-a-vis the Americans, the Chinese, and the Russians, everybody. Now that we can talk some other time. But the thing is that what I say is that West Asia, our policy has been very successful. It's an extremely important region for us, for our security, whether it is energy security, food security, or for the matter. But then there are also a lot of change taking place. Change is taking place is between Arabs and Israelis. That you should be aware. What are the Abraham Accords? Who are the countries that signed it? What are the benefits that are coming there? Is it good for India? How India can participate? So if some question like that comes up, then you'll have to answer that what kind can we, India, Israel and UAE, can we together participate in Africa? Israel has great technologies in agriculture. Now we can go together. India has tremendous expertise in agriculture. UAE has a lot of funding available. Can we go into those areas? Now, those are the kind of things that you'll have to think if at all these kind of questions come to you. Then Europe, I will touch European Union. Now, let us say that 27 countries, UK went out of it, Brexit, as you know. You will have to read about their reasons why they went out. But if a question comes, naturally, they will be asking you that why did Brexit happen? And is it beneficial to us in some way, or it was beneficial to the British? Although Europeans say that Britishers are going to lose. There is a problem in Scotland, does not want to be a part of the British design, for example. They want to be part of the European Union. So the European Union is the most successful regional organization. And if you were reading about WTO, World Trade Organization, you have to think about it that regional organizations were permitted to be part of the World Trade thing to increase and enhance the trade. Now you also have to see that WTO is not functioning well. Now United Nations is not functioning well. World Health Organization are not functioning well. There's something wrong basically with these organizations, or it is something wrong with the members. You can imagine if the members do not want an organization to function, whichever organization you see, then it will not work to its optimum level. So you can't say the UN is useless. I mean, who is UN at the end of the day? It's the membership. So if these P5 countries, in my view, the biggest bane of United Nations Security Council or United Nations is these veto wielding countries, 5 countries. Every time you hear that in the statements, we love to hear them also, that XYZ country supported India's candidature for the permanent seat, including UK. They will come because it's a good thing to say, no? Nice sound bite. Russia, sometimes USA. So they'll say, so we feel happy, yeah, this country is supporting us. The fact remains, none of these 5 countries want expansion of the Security Council. None of them, in reality. Because it will dilute their own this. Suppose there are 10 more members come in the Security Council with veto. You can imagine what will be the situation. Today, only one country, Russia. And see the hypocrisy of it all. When the vote on Russia's aggression is being taking place, Russia is the president of the council that month. So this is the problem with the organization. So it has to expand, of course. If they can finish the veto, think, let's say, the maximum number votes, whichever country. I mean, you can have the voting, simple voting, and then pass the resolution. Rather than putting a country a veto that it will not go through and create the conditions in the world, which is most terrible. So, I think that now, lastly, in your Ukraine, if you would been following it, there has been a Security Council resolution, most recent one, in which every country, all 15 of them, have agreed and said that there should be a peaceful resolution of the Ukraine crisis, which is what India started. Now, I will stop here, but I'll be very happy to answer any questions you have, because I've just gone randomly. Yes, please. Yeah.
So the first question that comes is, you touched upon the note about startups. So having been an ambassador, having been into IFS, do you think that it is the right choice for the Indian youth to go for civil services? This is one of the questions.
Well, whether you like it or not, you have to enter at a certain age, and that you have to be young to get in there. So we'll have some youth always coming there. But why? I mean, I tell you, this is the only service, in my view. For example, I would tell you about the foreign service a little more. This is probably the only government service which allows you a complete freedom to do what you want to do. And the basic tenet is to improve bilateral relationship with the country. Now that is your basic guideline. Under that, whatever you want to do, that's your initiative. Right? So up to you how you want to improve relations. You want to do cultural tropes, you want to do educational exchanges, you want to do technological exchanges, trade, this, that. So it's such a wide canvas. Similarly, if you are posted in the civil services, in the IAS and police and others, there are different challenges. But then you have stars everywhere. So the moment you get bracketed into the status, as they call it, then you cannot contribute to that. Today, India needs youth for development. So whether you are in the corporate sector, whether you are a startup, whether you are into the civil services, you are doing the same thing in a different way. So it's extremely important for them to be part of the civil services. And good one, bright ones should come. It should not be your second choice. Unfortunately, that's what is happening.
So, did you at any point of time in the Indian Foreign Service feel that you should have chosen IAS and it would have been even better?
Well, as far as I am concerned, personally, I never chose anything else. My only one option. So I did not want to go because I love traveling, meeting people. So I thought this was the easiest way to do so. This was another thing that before joining Foreign Service, I worked in Air India as a flight person. And I traveled about 40 countries before joining the Foreign Service. But it is the most satisfying job, I tell you. Because see, when I tell you what happens. For example, I was Trade Commissioner in New York. So one of my friends called me around 5 in the evening and he said, can I bring 2-3 Americans to your office now? Yeah, come on, drop it. Normally, phone, appointment, this, that. I say, yeah, come over. So these 3 people, 2 of them were consultants and one was an industrialist, American. And they were looking for going to Mexico or South Korea for some investment project with about $200 million investment. So they were sitting having coffee. I said, why don't you look at India? I mean, we had just opened up 93. I was there 93. So we are economic reforms, this, that. So people were beginning to understand about India's potential. So they said, no, we are not, India is too far. We are not looking. I said, nothing is far in today's world. Just go and have a look. But how do you have a look? They wanted information, right, about India. And at that time, unfortunately, in our system, we still were working with the telexes when everybody else was having PC 486s. So fortunately for me, a delegation had come a week before. And one of them was director of the Packaging Institute and all. So I called up that fellow. I said, listen, can you send me quickly some of the information on this? And we might have some projects. So he couriered everything. These guys got the information. And after that, about 10 days later, they came to meet me again. And they said, we want to visit India. And then finally, they had a project there. So that gives you the kind of satisfaction that you facilitated something and it shows instant results. So that's the beauty of it.
So in UPSC, we are faced with questions like, what do you understand by soft power? In the course of your discussion, you touched upon this term also. So if we were to listen from you, the 4 or 5 elements of the term soft power.
You see, the power is, very often power is a negative term when you look at power. So power means to deny something. Very often many people come, and one of the guys actually in one of the mock interviews, I asked him, I said, why don't you want to join the IAS? He said, it gives me power. This was, honest question, honest answer, I would say. It does give you power, whereas the DC, you are the Raja, because the mindset of the British is still there very much so. So I said, so I look at power means, the difference again, I tell you between foreign service and the IAS. This is the difference between power and influence. In civil services in India, you exercise power. In foreign services, you wield influence. When as a diplomat for India, I go and talk, like Modi ji always says, 1.3 billion people. So when I go and talk, I'm talking on behalf of the nation, country, representing my country. And that is the biggest high, adrenaline, that goes through you when you're talking about your country. That's the difference. So this is, what is a soft power now? Soft power, in my view, is a cumulative, how to put it, there are so many definitions you can read, but in my view personally, the soft power is the power that you have acquired by virtue of civilizational heritage, by virtue of your knowledge, by virtue of your principles, to be able to come out in front of somebody without forcing them for anything. So that if I want you to do something, you look at me. If you see yoga, for example, that's your soft power tool. We cannot say we monopolize yoga. But at the same time, there are more yoga centers probably in the United States than in India, right? Billions of dollars worth of industry. But when everybody thinks of yoga, they think of India. When you think of Bollywood, you think of India. That's your soft power tool in today's time. Every country you go, anywhere you will go, you will see the Bollywood influence. People start learning, including as far back as Mongolia. So in that sense, if you look at soft power, it is influencing somebody without forcing him. By example, you have earned that. Anybody looks at India, maybe except Pakistan, no country looks at India as a country which is going to force the world for anything. It wants to convince the world. That's the difference. Now you are also, for example, coming from India in a way that you say we are the ones who created zero, we gave the world this or that. So that is also your value systems. Your democracy is your soft power. Your IT is your soft power. You see that this is what I'm saying. In today's world and time, nobody knew. I was telling you that in 93, 94, when we started having a lot of IT companies coming up, and the Indians were known as the major IT guys, you'll be surprised that everybody in other countries, you go and talk to the people, oh, India is an IT power. And what has IT done to us, I would say. And I have seen it in New York and elsewhere also. Indians generally live in small pockets. I am a Telugu, so I am a Telugu Association of North America. I am a Bengali, so Bengali Association. So everybody was known by these kind of regional epithets. Over the time you go there, today everybody loves to, especially the youth, I am Indian. That has been missing. So your Indianness itself is your biggest soft power, I would say.
Sir, as someone who served in Russia twice over, so this question is being quite frequently asked in the UPSC main interviews as well, that is it right what India is doing in terms of maintaining the silence towards what Russia has done to Ukraine?
My God, I thought I spoke on this for a very long time. But we have not maintained silence. When have we maintained silence?
In terms of...
condemn. You are saying condemn.
Yeah.
But again, this was the whole thing about, let me say, what have we done? We have called a spade, right? Without abusing somebody. We have seen the games, geopolitical games of these countries, right? Being played out. This is the game, as I said, between Russia and the West. And West means only US. Europeans have been caught in this game. But they have no choice but to go with the Americans, right? Russians have made a mistake by invading. India has told, we have told Putin directly, Prime Minister Modi has said, when we say that cease the hostilities, return to the table, respect the sovereignty, respect the territorial integrity, who are we referring to? So we are not being silent. When we are condemning the Bucha killings, we are not silent. So I think that this is the allegation and the lie that is being perpetrated and multiplied by the Western media. And they wanted this, and they have been all silenced. Modi goes to Germany, goes to France, goes to Denmark. in 3 days meets 8 leaders. All of them had the same agenda and they all were convinced. Now tell me one thing, if you just condemn Russia for that matter, let's say, okay, we condemn Russia's invasion. Just use the word. What kind of a leeway you have in international diplomacy? Today you are the only honest interlocutor who can talk to Russia, who can talk to USA, who can talk to Zelensky. See, if you say we condemn your invasion, will it deter Putin to go back? But where India stands, they know that we are not approving what they are doing in as many words. And diplomat is the one who says everything without saying anything. Right? So this is what the diplomacy is all about. It's not media game. But media is very important. So we have created, I think that you must read, those of you who are appearing in the exam, you must see Jaishankar's clarifications. Most of the time, I'm very clear, articulate. He has very clearly said the same things. So we have stood for a principled approach. We should have condemned America for intervening in Iraq. It's just 20 years. Imagine. So you cannot take an isolated incident. You just take we are not Lithuania. At the end of the day, you are India, 1/6 of the population of the world. You can't be pushed around just because Americans want it. So we are not in the game of pleasing somebody. We are in the game of resolving the issues. And that's what. You can't have peace if I accuse you. First thing, if I tell you something wrong, you will be on the defensive and offensive both towards me. So I close my all options. Even if you forget about our relationship with them or they stood for us, nobody can today approve any invasion, military invasion by A country into B country. India has told it in as many words. When Modi ji spoke to Putin in the first time, he told him, you should have given more chance to diplomacy. And this was part of our statement at the United Nations Security Council. We clearly said. So everything is written, in the explanation of vote. So we are not silent, number one, right? And there is no futility. There is no utility of this at all. It's totally futile. That's the reason China did not do that. That's the reason UAE did not do that. Who was the America's bum chum? Israel did not do that. Turkey did not do that. So it's because the countries know that. You see, they say only the person who is the chaste one should cast the stone. These are the crooks of the world we are dealing with. The Americans, tomorrow they will dump you if they had some good thing with China. So are you going to go into that kind of relationship or have some kind of a relationship which is stood by you? Even with the India-China war recently, the Russians are the only ones who told us whatever you need, we are going to give it to you. S-400 we are buying from them. Chinese don't want it, not only the Americans. Even the Chinese don't want India to have S-400. But the Russians are going ahead and giving it to you. So you have to look at it from a holistic perspective. Just for some making a statement, you can't just say, it serves no purpose. Whole idea is what? Idea is to stop the war. Idea is to achieve peace. Idea to start dialogue. Not abusing somebody. And if you see that why the war started, you all know that. Putin said that he had given an offer for an indivisible security of Europe. I said in 1999, he had also told Clinton that I'm ready to be part of NATO. They don't want it. So you create a condition and then there is a superpower. So if I'm going to talk about America, what they have done, what kind of excesses they have done, or the Britishers going into the Falkland Islands, or the French going into this thing, there is no end to it. The idea is for a responsible power. So I say, India is not silent, it is a voice of sanity.
So if any one of you has any question for sir, yeah.
Currently, we're talking about how India is youth and we are going to become a superpower on the basis of our youth culture. But India is the only country, is one of the countries which is the highest diaspora. We have the high amount of brain drain. How are we going to stop it?
But it's a brain gain, brain trust, man. It used to be a brain drain because you didn't have the opportunities in India. Today they are the same people. Now let's listen one way. And I can tell you from my own example. When I was in New York, all the IT business you owe it to the Americans, right? The IT companies in the US, They are the ones who came back when they started doing the IT business here. Most of the people from there, right? They're the same Indians who had gone 30, 40 years back. They are the ones who facilitated India becoming an IT power. That's one. You go to, in Silicon Valley as it is called, in San California. So when you go there, every third person is an Indian. And they are very much strong and looking towards India, trying to help India in that. That's one. Secondly, when I was in New York, another thing I saw is when we approached them for investing in India, all the financial companies who came during that period had a vice president or some senior level person who was an Indian. I used them. I went to them, gave presentations to the Americans. They arranged my presentations. We started looking at nearly 100 odd companies came into India, financial sector, power sector companies. So what you're looking at is they can be a very good conduit for you. Today, Indians have also arrived. I mean, in the beginning, everybody is struggling. So you don't become a Microsoft chairman or a Google chairman in one day, right? Or the Citibank or something like that. But aren't those countries, those leaders responsible? If you have a Google head, an Indian or a Microsoft, doesn't it give you the kind of flow? What is he? He's still Indian at heart. He has to be American, of course. But he's still at heart. When the question of India comes, they don't go back. I have not seen anybody, except probably one or two guys, but everybody else. Earlier they used to criticize India a lot. Hey, India, a lot of corruption, a lot of this, nothing happens there. This was their basic clean. But today they don't say like that. It doesn't happen that way. If your diaspora is outside, now I told you about the 9 million people, we have 31, 9 million are in Gulf countries. They live very poor life, most of them. But they are the ones who are feeding your $60 billion a year into your foreign exchange kitty. Right. So, and today there are many of them are very rich. I know one person who is Lulu hypermarkets, those who are from Kerala would know it. The guy had gone as just a waiter or something like that. Today he's one of the richest guys in UAE, in Doha. So they are your conduit. Now the government has started something different. They have started this to get technology, science and technology collaboration. So many people who are working, professors and working in research institutes in those countries. So they are the ones who are now helping you identify technologies and help you get the technologies here. Because next phase is technological phase. In that you need collaborations from outside. And the fastest way to go there is to talk to your friends. I mean, Indians. If there is an Indian, I have always seen as an ambassador, whatever, we approach them, they're more than happy to at least arrange meetings, first meetings. Rest is up to you. You have to be attractive enough for people to come to your country. So they are your conduits. They are not necessarily a loss. That's why we call them now as brain trust. It used to be brain drain in 60s. Yeah. So we have to look at it like that. It's a positive. It's not a negative. I mean, which country does not send its people outside? Yes. No, why should they come back here? Yeah. But they're doing it. They're doing it also for money. Technology, collaborations, increasing their own profiles. Yeah, today they have all kinds of attractiveness in India as well. This is something I feel that is more important to look at. So they are your go-to people in the first place. There are associations. They have made hundreds of associations. Right. I mean, I tell you, this is a very difficult thing for us to do. And I can say now, maybe it will be podcast. There are 400 associations of Indians in New York City or New York area. Ambassador or Consul General, they are requested to go every day. So if you go every day to a function of one association, you can imagine you can't even complete in 1 year. So what you do is you try to bring them together. That okay, one person president of each becomes another group, that also becomes 400 people. So they are your people. Now when you create Kamala Harris, whatever for it, so today she is the vice president. I mean, she does have some roots in India and she enjoys that. They are governors, Indian origin in the US. They are important people. And when you are there, that is a country which works on pressure groups. So Indians act as a very big pressure group. So you have, that's why diaspora diplomacy, as they say, Modi ji goes there and talks. It is not only to tell them that, okay, I am the BJP. It is to tell them that you are part of India and we want to connect with you. So that's the difference.
So guys, before we go, yeah, you have
One more, any questions? Please ask.
Apart from getting this business opportunities, promoting business opportunities and ties between the countries, working on national interest, to what degree we get that kind of opportunities that IAS is said to be like a satisfying job, like helping changing people's lives in real terms. So, what kind of humanitarian jobs we get there, like in foreign countries? Like there would be some deprived people, our deprived people also, and their deprived people also. So, do we get that kind of opportunities there also?
You see, 90% of the world is underdeveloped, right? Much worse than us. What we do is we have the, as I mentioned, ITEC program, Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program, under which we provide lines of credit. We provide training facilities, capacity building. Not only to that, I mean, to all the countries, we provide thousands and thousands of scholarships in Africa, everywhere. So as a diplomat, your job is to basically see to it that these opportunities are properly harnessed, they are properly identified, they are properly provided for and executed in time. That is very important. That's what you do as diplomats. So that is like solar mamas. I don't know if you have heard about it. The Africa ladies, you know, they come here. So they were trained here. Now they have created a movement and they always talk about their experience in India. In Africa, a large number of leaders were trained here who are today our president, prime ministers and all. When I was ambassador in Libya, a gentleman who used to study with me in JNU, he became the prime minister of the country. It helped me a great deal in overcoming the crisis that I was facing. So they are there. So we help a lot. Bangladesh, Sri Lanka now today you see. So abroad we are providing so much of assistance. That's all done through the embassy only. So you are involved. And it is visible on the grassroots. Plenty. That's your job. As a diplomat, job is networking.
You mentioned about India post 2050 in the next, and there is something she has been talking about China dream that was points to 2050. How do you look at these two scenarios when India, what will be the picture of India post 2050 and what will be the picture of China post 2050?
Well, it depends on which way China, yeah, it depends on which way China goes. You see that currently China, I think, is it is a power to reckon with. It is 5 times our economy. It's a bigger country, and it has a far greater outreach in the world over the time, whether it's BRI, whether it's debt diplomacy or whatever it is. At the same time, China is facing a lot of problems. Its internal problems. It is also facing, I would say, its BRI is under stress. Its diplomatic relationships are at a very difficult point at the moment. And so if China remains intact, it is not internally, implodes, or it is able to continue at the same pace as it is doing now after overcoming the pandemic crisis and all, and improves its relationships with major countries, becomes an important and responsible partner, then China will continue to grow, right? Whether it's 2050 or 2060, whatever it is. How I look at India is, India's path is slightly different. We don't have fat checkbook, but we are coming there. So you will have to see that India will continue to grow. If we are growing at 8 to 10%, if somehow we are able to continue to grow 8 to 10%, then by 2050, we should be at least the second largest economy, if not the first. As per current estimates, we would be the third after the US, but we could reach second. Suppose there is a war between the US and China. Scenario, like nobody thought Russia-Ukraine war will happen, right? It has taken back, it will take back Russia many years, right? Irrespective whether they win or they lose. Then what are you looking at? you are looking at a country, if we don't get involved for some reason, then you are looking that India could become number one power. Because both these countries will decimate one another. If that kind of a situation happens, whether through trade war, whether actual war, whether cyber war, whether whatever, unless it becomes a world war. So that's a kind of scenario we can say. We could not feel that 2 years of pandemic could have brought down all world economies, right? Nobody could anticipate. So to 2050 is a bit far, but I have a hope in India, but we have to remain a country together.
So anybody else? Any other question? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, it is a mistake. It is a mistake because in 1997 to 99, when Berlin Wall fell, Soviet Union disintegrated. At that time, there used to be another organization called Warsaw Pact. The Warsaw Pact was also like NATO on the other side. So Warsaw Pact also disintegrated, right? But the NATO continued. But they gave the promise to Russia that your security will not be compromised. This was which was given by James Baker, by many other leaders repeatedly to the Russian leadership. At that time, Russia was at its lowest. It has bad leaders. It also was going through a transition phase. It was weak. They liked it. They like weaker countries. They don't like strong leaders. They don't like strong countries. And don't forget, Russia is the largest country in the world, in terms of size, in terms of resources. So they don't want us. So then Putin came on the scene. So once Putin came on the scene, he wanted to adjust and live with, because an average Russian thinks in terms of Europe. They feel themselves European, part of Europe. But the Americans and the NATO, they had a different game plan. That's what I say, geopolitics. They don't want a stronger country. Now their fear is that Russia and China, if they get together, then we are going to have a major problem. That's their major threat. That's why decimate Russia first, because it's a weaker economy. It's a large country with a small population. It has a strong leader, but institutions are not that strong. So they tried to put here. But one thing I want to tell you is, and you must mull over, I don't know if it is going to be helpful to you at all in your civil services preparations, but as citizens, you must look at it, what is going to be the impact of this war, outcome. This war is being fought on several: economic, political, strategic, military, information warfare, and above all, this is a war by different means. That is financial instruments, weaponization of financial instruments. This is the difference in this war. Russia is the largest country sanctioned country in the world today, maximum. Can you imagine? You have $630 billion of your own money reserves, and the Americans say, no, it's not your money anymore. We have closed SWIFT to you. Is it plundering or not? You put the money in a bank because you think that money is safe. And tomorrow the bank manager says, no, I cannot give it to you. Right? So it's like that. Forget about Russia, Afghanistan, going through a terrible phase. Sri Lanka, they will not pump in some money there, but it does not serve their purpose. But they are pumping billions and billions of dollars in arms, ammunition, and others in making Zelensky fight Russia. Why? America is safe. There's no problem for them. Europeans are going to have a problem. So what I'm looking at is a new Cold War 2.0, which will happen. With this war will be a bit different than the previous Cold War. In this one, you will also see an emergence of an alternate financial architecture, where Russia or China will lead it. And that is going to be a major difficulty. And that's why I advance an argument to the government also that we must work and provide leadership to a very large countries and create something called Nations for Strategic Autonomy. You need choices, and you should be able to exercise those choices if there is an international. So if there is a Cold War II indeed happens, then a very difficult kind of a situation will emerge.
So, like in IAS or IPS, we see huge amount of political interference. So, what degree is different in IFS, for instance?
Well, our direct interaction is very limited. You see, you as let's say you are a district magistrate, you have to deal with these guys on a daily basis, right? We don't have that. Secondly, I can share with you is that when they come, mostly visiting those countries, then normally we are the ones who guide them. So I don't see, I mean, plus, you see, politicians have a role to play. At the end of the day, you know, we are administration. The government makes the policies, that means politicians, right? Whichever is in power. So your job is to execute that policy and not to question it. If you have any feedback on it, then you say it in a different way.
You seem to be confused between choosing IAS and IFS, is it?
Recently, I have got so much exposure to this foreign affairs thing and international relations. It's too attractive.
Don't worry, we will be organizing some secretary. This fellow has got one last
One
question.
question.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, while we are talking about international relations, I believe that we have a good international relation. Our policies are good and our leaders are really doing great in the international platform. But sir, if you talk about the domestic platform, do you really feel so? We are world number one democratic country. We do practice democracy. But do we actually practice, sir? Don't you feel that?
What is, I mean, you give me an example why the democracy, I mean, you are talking the question here.
Don't you think if we believe in secularism more, we could have been much better in the international economic market, and you know, people would have welcomed us more in the economic market. But we don't have much violence.
No, I would slightly disagree with you. I 100% agree with you that we should be, I mean, we are constitution. We should respect the constitution. That's it. Whichever government is in power, whatever constitution says, unless you change it. So if the constitution says that we are a secular, democratic, socialist republic, so we might as well be, right? When the fundamental rights or the your directive principles inform you that, you know, everybody has a right to worship to whichever they want it. But at the same time, you have to see that the democracy means also politics, right? The democracy is also, it's not one person, one country, one system. But we are better off in the senses, if you see January 6th, what happened in the US. I mean, Trump did not want to give power back. He wanted to continue. It does not happen in India. You lose the elections, the other person comes and takes over.
We cannot compare violence with another violence.
No, there's no violence here.
You understand?
No, I understand what you are trying to say, but I fully agree with you that, you know, we are projecting ourselves as a secular country. That's why I said, you know, we have credentials. We are the only country in the world. I mean, probably many people don't know. Christianity came to India before it went to Europe. Islam came to India before it went to the Arab world. So why can't we exploit that when we are talking out? I used to do that, and it really cut a lot of ice. But any lumpen elements can create a problem. It happens. And in the media, it becomes much more. Yes, sir.
Sir, if this current armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine continues, this is going to be one of the largest refugee crises in Europe in the recent times. So it will naturally affect the socio-economic structure of the West European countries. So how do you think it is going to affect, and are they prepared to deal with it?
Who affect who?
West Europe.
The refugee crisis in the West European countries.
Well, it is going to be very difficult for them. You see, in war, there are no winners. And it is true. I mean, Europe, that's why I'm mentioning to you that Europe is already suffering. They are not only suffering the high prices, but also this about 5 million or 6 million Ukrainians who have moved into European countries. And where have they gone? They have gone to the poorest countries in the region, in Europe, whether it is Poland, whether it's Slovakia or others who don't have much means, right? Now, in first weeks, Poland's population increased by 5% due to refugees. So wherever the refugees go, your infrastructure comes under tremendous stress. Your socio-economic balance changes, and therefore there will be tremendous amount of funding will be required. to put those people in the right place so that they can go back to their country if they can. And very likely, not many people will go back because they have been aiming to be part of the European Union or the West and all that. So most of them will continue like that. But this will have a great impact on these countries, their economy. So this is why I say that today, whatever be the situation may seem, the Europeans are going to be bigger loser by creating this Ukrainian crisis continue. Because see, the thing is, I mean, you cannot fault Putin now. You can fault him in the beginning that he went in. He tried to do that. But today, the war is being continued because of them. If you continue to pump in arms, ammunition, latest weaponry, everything, then obviously, I mean, who's going to stop? That's the problem. Sorry? UN Security Council, I told you, as long as when there are any countries which are wielding veto, P5, when they are involved, United Nations is completely useless.
Fine, guys, we have to conclude as well. One question each, please, so that we can conclude, as sir has another meeting as well.
India interests in India for economic and other reasons, whatever it may be. Sir, if we go on war with China, because as Russia is the highest supplier of petroleum energy supplies, Russia's union, currently Russia is also facing sanctions from all the same countries which are the importers of Russian energy. So if we go on war, and as we are the highest medicine suppliers to the world, one of the highest exports of India contains medicines. So we may also face sanctions from the same countries which are taking.
We have faced sanctions. Nuclear, when we went our nuclear tests, we faced sanctions. We still have sanctions from the Americans. Trump introduced those sanctions. GSP benefits he withdrew from us for $200 million worth of goods. So sanctions are very much placed against India also. Similarly, in Chabahar port, you must be reading about it in Iran. So we have not been able to move forward on that. S-400, there is the CAATSA sanctions, which are still there. So they keep on dangling these sanctions onto you. But we are not going to go to war with China. Why should we go to war? Because war will only take you back. And that's what they want. They want you to get into a war so that you don't rise to their level. That's my theory.
So fine, guys, before we conclude today, I would like to introduce sir again once for the online audience who joined us late. Sir has served as the ambassador to countries like Libya, Jordan, even Russia twice over. So we often hear the adage that once an IPS, once a cop, always a cop. But keeping in mind the fact that sir has been quite regular in doing the podcasts on forums like Vivekanand International Forum, and he's been a constant writer in newspapers like Financial Express and various other journals that we read. So it makes me say that once a diplomat, always a diplomat. On behalf of our entire student community, I would like to felicitate sir.
Thank you.
With a small token gesture from the entire team JV and the faculty members as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for sparing some time.
No, it's a pleasure. And wish you all the very best. Hope to see you on the other side.
Just a small gesture.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. All the best to you all.
Can they reach out to you on some slide or something like that?
Yeah.